Hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. It's noon, and the final tributes for the greatest Muhammad Ali are underway. Our Lisa Godley has a tribute, and our roundtable pundits will share their thoughts about the boxer and the humanitarian. And we'll take a deep dive into the violence that plagues the African-American community. Do you know that since January, hundreds of people have been shot or killed in Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Portsmouth, and Newport News, and the vast majority of victims and assailants are Black? Do Black lives really matter? Stay tuned. The Another View Roundtable is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African-American perspective, this is Another View.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Two weighty topics for the Another View Roundtable today: violence in our community and the death of the greatest, Muhammad Ali. Let's meet our pundits. Roger Chesley is a columnist with the Virginian Pilot, and you can read his columns every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Hey, Roger.
Hey, Barbara. Glad to see the sun for a few days.
Yes, how about that? It's beautiful outside, too. Carol Pretlow is a professor of political science at Norfolk State University. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Barbara.
Semester's done?
Yes,
School's
I'm
over.
free.
Bill Thomas is our resident conservative and community activist. Mr. Thomas, welcome. Haven't seen you in a while.
I've been out doing some other very interesting things in California. I've been to Chicago, New York.
Oh, my.
And I should be in Richmond tonight, but I'm not going.
Okay. And Wil LaVeist is an author, journalist, and talk show host, and you can hear his show every Wednesday at noon on WHRV-FM, Hampton University Radio. Hey, Will.
Hey, Barbara.
How are you?
I'm doing well, Miss Baltimore. Glad going to be going up to your city right after we leave this show.
Oh, fantastic. You're going to have a great time. And as you go through Roger's city of Washington, D.C.
No, I'm not going there. I'm going a completely different route. 13 one time. I'm not going there.
95, you're not going to make it.
Yeah, I'm not going there.
Oh, my.
Haters.
Oh, gosh. So, all right, as we speak, the tributes are happening, and the final farewell for Muhammad Ali is going on. Our Lisa Godley has put together a piece to talk about the champ's life and legacy.
Muhammad Ali.
It's a TKO. Muhammad Ali successfully in the 11th round defends his heavyweight championship of the world.
Who calls to the other guy?
I'm gonna float like a butterfly and sting like a bee.
Catch me if you can.
Born Cassius Marcellus Clay in January of 1942, he was raised in a middle-class Louisville, Kentucky neighborhood. His interest in fighting started after someone stole his brand-new bicycle. A police officer told him if he wanted to fight, he should learn to do it right, and encouraged the 12-year-old Clay to take boxing lessons. Within weeks, he'd won his first amateur bout, and by 18 had won the light heavyweight gold medal at the Summer Olympic Games in Rome.
Clay was by far the best of the USA boxers.
4 years later, with an unblemished 19-0 record, he took on Sonny Liston, capturing the title heavyweight champion of the world.
I don't have a mark on my face, and I upset Sonny Liston, and I just turned 22 years old. I must be the greatest.
After the fight, Clay announced that he was a member of the Nation of Islam and changed his name to Muhammad Ali. He stood 6 feet 3 inches tall, was handsome, charismatic, and moved in the ring with lightning speed. His unique style of taunting his opponents with poetic jabs became his trademark.
He might be big and he might be tall, but if he mess with me, he sure will fall.
In 1967, Ali refused to serve in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam War. As a result, he was stripped of his title and his license to fight. 2 months later, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for draft evasion, but allowed to remain free pending his appeal.
It has been said that I have two alternatives: either go to jail or go to the army. But I would like to say that there is another alternative. That alternative is justice.
He was able to return to the ring 3 years later, and in 1971, the Supreme Court reversed the draft evasion conviction.
I always felt that once the highest source of justice looked at it, that would be vindicated.
That same year, Muhammad Ali suffered his first professional loss to Joe Frazier in what was deemed the fight of the century.
6 for Frazier.
Ali would come back to beat Frazier twice before hanging up his gloves for good in 1981 with an overall record of 56-5. Muhammad Ali died on June 3rd from a respiratory illness, a condition complicated by Parkinson's disease. He was 74.
Catch me if you can.
Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Will, you got some thoughts about the boxer, the man, the humanitarian?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was one of my heroes. I mean, I name Paul Robeson, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and Ali or four of key, men that really influenced my life. And the most thing that really touched me about him was his stance against the Vietnam War. I mean, he's a great American story, but he's really a war hero because you have a man who stood for his faith, his beliefs. And me as a young man coming up in the late 70s, growing up in Brownsville and Brooklyn, and seeing a lot of the older guys from the neighborhood come back, strung out on heroin. We see now a lot of our veterans coming back, maimed, not getting the services that they deserve. That's really what he was standing up against. He was saying, wait a minute, you're sending me to an unjust war for your purposes. And then when I come back and when these brothers and sisters come back, then what? And so in a lot of ways, I mean, we know he had a warrior spirit. We know he was courageous. Mm-hmm. So that's really what he was standing for. And like he said, he stood for justice. And I hope that that's what people remember about him, because we have a way of making our great leaders, turning them into caricatures later. Like Martin Luther King is this drum major for justice now, as if that's all we want to talk about. That's all we want to talk about. And that's the sum total of him. And I hope that people remember that about Muhammad Ali, about how he stood to really make America better.
Mm-hmm. Roger?
Yeah, much of what Will said, and the fact, I'm trying to think, are there any athletes today that would have taken a stand like that, knowing that, okay, you're going to lose your income for 3 to 4 years. You might not win this legal battle. In such a different time, such a somebody who put it all on the line for what ultimately was a misbegotten war. And that's no disrespect to the people who did go to the war, but as we all know, so many people died, so many people's lives were changed, so many millions of Vietnamese died as well. We shouldn't have been there, and he spoke up for that on the boxing end. I was always more of a fan of Joe Frazier's. I like the way he boxed.
Lord,
I like the
Lord, take me now.
Well, Bill, if we can get that happen, that would be a good thing for all of us. But
Joe Frazier was the real deal. I'm with you. I'm with you, Roger.
Let him finish. I want to hear you.
I was always disappointed in the way he so publicly Ali came out and belittled him in public. Somebody who was Frazier was such a proud man, and knowing later how much help Frazier tried to give Ali behind the scenes, just financially. But that said, no question that Ali, larger than life figure, possibly the greatest athlete in U.S. history, given so many different areas that he touched. And so many different, such a place of charisma, of importance that he had in this country.
Carol?
Yeah, I think what stood out to me was his stance, of course, against Vietnam. And at the time, I was struck by the Vietnam War because I had a cousin who was killed in Vietnam. And the climate on most university campuses was very anti his position, even though I was at a historically black institution. Well, he should have just gone to the war. Well, why? So I felt very proud of him and very aligned with him when he says, okay, this is my statement and I can back it up. Take the title, do what you got to do, but you can't do that without realizing that for a lot of people, the fight in Vietnam is counterproductive when you have a political climate at home that needs addressing.
Bill?
Oh, I think he's the greatest. No doubt about it. In a number of ways, because my father at the time and my brother was in the Vietnam stuff, and my father was really conservative. I mean, really, really.
That's where you get it from?
But he was a quiet conservative. He was a Baptist
Well, you definitely
deacon.
didn't get that.
But what he did was what just amazed me. He said nothing about Ali. Nothing. He would just sit there and let us watch him. He said nothing. So that was his approval right then and there. And I said, if that man can convince my father to say the kind of things that some of these knuckleheads were saying at the time about he wasn't right and he wasn't, because we remembered when, even at that same time, maybe a few years earlier, when Martin Luther King went against the war, and they were saying he's going down the wrong pathway, the wrong this and wrong that, and the Negro specialists were all getting together trying to damn him at the time as well. But I've never seen a person more articulate, more demonstrative, like that whooping he gave Floyd Patterson, which Floyd Patterson needed a whooping, and he gave him a good whooping and talked about him. So I will never, ever appreciate or understand the dignity, the spirituality, the bravery, just everything that this man has ever done.
Okay, Roger.
There are so many images, us who lived through most of his public life, and it is just amazing, this man who was so gifted with voice and articulation spoke in a different way when he lit the Olympic flame in 1996. He had been ravaged so much
with the Parkinson's
by that, and he was trembling as he held that torch. But what an uplifting moment. I don't know anybody who saw that, who would not have just been crying uncontrollably.
Exactly.
I don't believe that it was known pretty much to the public that he was going to light it that evening. And just a remarkable.
Especially when you know the whole arc of where he came from,
right.
Segregated South. Olympian, as the piece just talked about, fought for his country, fought against the political forces of his country, for his country again, and then went through all those ups and downs.
a movement that the Nation of Islam that a lot of people did not, had fear of and so forth, but yet he brought dignity to the Muslim community.
Right,
also.
and then we look at the perception of Islam now, and here's this man showing and making a stance like that for peace. Based on his faith and his principles and self-identifying. Can you imagine people telling you can't say what your name is? Can you imagine that? I mean, can you imagine that? And he's like, well, are you crazy? My name is Muhammad Ali. This is who I am. I define who I am. And the whole and as Bill said, it was not just a lot of white folks, a lot of black folks. You can't say who you are.
Exactly.
We can't say who he is. I mean, what are you talking about? Are you out of your mind? But that was the whole arc, and like Roger said, it culminated. If you really knew all of that, to see that, you're like, wow.
Yeah.
So I hope that we do more than just put them on the stamp. See, that's what we do. We just put people on stamp, and that's all they become. Martin Luther King is the slain civil rights leader. Oh, he was much more than that. But that's what you hear, every year.
And part of that, I think, in terms of keeping the history alive, if you will, is and making sure that people know that he's much more than that is our responsibility to teach our children. I mean, we've got to be able to continue to tell them about the legacy, tell them about the person, tell them about what he did and why he was so great.
Yeah, it was consistency all down the road. Even when he came back from the Olympics and he saw where America was, he threw his medal into the River. I mean, it was just a consistency. And I'll never forget one of the times I've ever seen my dad either stand up to some people, and they were calling Muhammad Ali at the time the devil, and the devil whispered in his ear and said, "You're not going to weather the storm." I'll never forget my dad. He was saying this: "No, Muhammad Ali is the storm." And he never said anything else. And I became so defiant, so self-assured, so feeling of superiority that the whole earth and whole generation of races started in Africa that makes us on the high heel of that whole thing. That gave us a whole lot of self-assurance.
Lisa, do we have a call? Should we take line one? Line one. Tom joins us from Norfolk. Hi, Tom. You're on the air.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Muhammad Ali is a hero of mine. I'm 68 years old, so in the 1960s I was a teenager, and in fact an original hero of mine was Floyd Patterson when I was a little kid. But
that whooping boy.
And anyway, Cassius Clay and then Muhammad Ali became a hero of mine as I was a little bit more mature. The point I wanted to make is that about Ali and about pretty much all of our American heroes, we remember them as heroic figures, as if they were always heroic figures. And I think it's really important, especially in light of what you were just talking about, to note that our heroes started out, as babies and then young people, and then they matured. In the early 60s, I went to see Cassius Clay fight Doug Jones in Madison Square Garden. And it was a very close fight. Some people thought Jones won the fight. Clay got the decision. His next fight after that was with Henry Cooper in Europe. And at the end of the fourth round, Cooper landed a left hook that knocked him down and could easily have won Cooper the fight had there been more time left in the round. But that round was almost over. Clay went on to win. His next fight after that was with Sonny Liston, whose last three fights had all ended in the first round. So when we think of the great Clay or the great Ali, we didn't know how great he was as an athlete or how great he was going to be as a person until really probably that fight with Sonny Liston. I have on my wall in a frame the back page of the New York Post from the day before that fight, and the headline is, "Cassius scared to death, commission doctor says." and I even at the age of 16, I was smart enough after that fight ended to take a pair of scissors and cut that thing out. The original.
Bravo to you, Tom.
And right under that, I have the iconic photo of Ali standing over Liston in their second fight in Lewiston, Maine, about 15 months later. But anyway, the point I wanted to make is that I think it's, for an accurate view of history, it's healthy to understand that our heroes weren't born heroes, that they grew into it. Just as Ali grew athletically, he matured as a man and as a human being into this magnificent, the most famous person in the world then or probably now. And extremely influential, but he wasn't born that way, and that was really the point I wanted to make.
Tom, that's a great point, and thank you so much for your call. We appreciate it. So Tom brings up the point. I love that headline, "Scared to death," huh? All right, I want to transition to our other story, or our other topic for today, and that is the violence that has been plaguing America in general, particularly the African American community. And there's been a lot going on. Bill and I have had numerous conversations about this, and he brought up a term, and he said, our kids are suffering from lead poisoning. And I went, no, they're not. That's been eradicated. And he looked at me and said, think about it. Lead poisoning, I love that, because you're talking about the bullets and the guns and the shootings, Bill.
Yes. It's the most disgusting, most disappointing part of our history. It just unnerves me, the fact that all of our children, and especially African-American males, very lives are in danger. It's not Norfolk, it's not Chicago, or it's all of them. And all of our lives, every guy that I know has a son, has either been shot at, kidnapped, threatened by the police, every last one. It doesn't matter. I'll never forget, my two kids were going out to a party at the mayor's, somebody's city councilman in Virginia Beach, And I told them to make sure you act dressed, put a collared shirt on, do all the 9 yards, and just be very, very nice. And they're walking to the guy's house, and the police pull over, and it's just. And then it's this self-hate among ourselves that is just driving us. It's just like, I'll never forget, maybe 15 years ago, Colonel Bridges. His son, he was going to Norfolk State at the time. It's not Norfolk State. It's all the schools. They're all doing all this. It's not it. But Colonel Bridges' son went over to the 7-Eleven, and he bumped into a kid, and the kid got in an argument and just pulled out a gun and shot him in the head. And actually, my dad had known the Bridge family, and he just said, please, somebody go over there and help my son and just do something to be with him and stand with him. So my father had called me. But the long story short is the fact that there were plenty of people there from Norfolk State who did a wonderful job with this. But I'll never forget this man, his whole family up there crying, 2 daughters and his wife. And they were saying, he said, I have survived the battles of Vietnam only to come back to give my kids an opportunity. And he's just stepped aside. And then I hear all of these people going around talking about racism and all of this stuff, when at the same time, over 265,000 African Americans over the past 15 years, according to FBI statistics, have perished on our streets and neighborhoods. For the good of me, I don't understand it. I don't know. Roger writes about it. I kept a lot of articles that Roger written 10, 15 years ago. Where's the moral outrage? I got that, I think, cut and pasted someplace.
I wanted to bring this up because I know that when there is a high-profile shooting, such as what happened last weekend in Tidewater Gardens, and full disclosure, I am the chair of the Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and it's horrible when things like that happen in any community. We feel it just even more when it happens in one of our public housing communities. But my point being, there was a hue and cry again for the FBI to come and to investigate all of the police shootings since 2010 and so forth. And I am not taking anything away from from those investigations or whatever needs to happen between police and the community in terms of shootings. But when you also look at what is happening on a day in and day out basis within our communities with these guns and with shooting, it just made me wonder, when are we going to stand up and start screaming that something has got to change, Roger?
Yeah, I do not know. I wrote a column a few months ago, and I posted it also on my Facebook page today, right before the conversation today. And it is almost as if we have, as a people, we have no knowledge of some of the struggles we have gotten over, some of the hurdles that we've gotten over, some of the places that we've been, and how strong a people we are. And it's as if the last 30 to 40 years, there seems to be no acknowledgement of that. You would think that if we respected each other more, we would not do this. Now, are we getting enough leadership from political leaders to say, hey, this is such an issue, we need to be dealing with this all the time. This needs to be out front. And like you said, we should not have police officers shooting unarmed people, although we believe that the gentleman last week was armed. But where is that same sense of consistent, never-ending talk and acknowledgement that we are killing each other ridiculously? You put a story out, you share with us the story of the New York Times covering the Memorial Day weekend in Chicago. Absolutely. And that is, it is just disheartening, the number of African American and Latino folks who got killed, not just shot, but killed that weekend.
And the New York Times put out an article in 3 days. They covered the Memorial Day weekend. In 3 days in Chicago, 64 people shot, 6 of them dead. And this one a quote that I'm going to read to you all literally stopped me in my tracks as I was reading that story. And the woman, and it says, and so the logic of one Chicago mother who watches another mother weep over her dead son in their South Side neighborhood is this. She is glad her own son is in jail because the alternative is unbearable.
Absolutely.
I mean, it just took my breath away when I read that. She said he was bound to be shot this summer. And, you know, I know that there are people who are on the ground, and I want to encourage people who are on the ground trying to make these changes within our community to give us a call at 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240, because I want to throw out this posit. I don't want to say that no one is doing anything, because there are a lot of people, but we got to hold the media a bit accountable in terms of, do we cover those things when people are actually out there and they're trying to make a difference or make a change in the community? They're working with the folks who live in these communities.
I've said on this show before that major media reflects white, middle to upper middle class values. That's what it does. That's who's in the newsrooms. We all know that. Roger knows that. I know it. You know it, Barbara. Yeah. That's who's in the newsroom. So of the people who make those kinds of decisions of what gets on the air, it requires a special kind of person who takes the journalistic principles very seriously that we all went to school on and learned, that you need to cover the total community coverage and you need to step outside of your comfort zone. You need to try to understand what's going on in the community. And with the other things that are going on in the newsroom, you know, economic issues, pressures, deadlines, this, that, the other, that's not an easy thing to do. And those of us who do put those kinds of efforts forward, what happens to us, Roger? We are told, well, no, you don't do that story, this, that, nobody wants to hear that, and so forth. So that's sort of the dynamic that's going on. It's not an excuse at all. It's an indictment. But that's the dynamic that's going on. And so you got those kind of messages that are coming at people. So the people who are on the ground level doing the work don't feel acknowledged, encouraged. They feel like they're operating alone. And a lot of times they are exposed, because what happens is, and why you don't see more people in the community standing up, is because who is going to protect them when they stand up? The police, by nature, police work is reactionary by nature. So if they're not there when you tell what's going on, when you share what's going on, and you have to face the gangsters that are trying to protect their territory and make their paper and make and eat, that's the dynamic that's going on. So what it's going to require is a more comprehensive approach where people are supported.
Carol?
Yeah, and I understand that most of us on a day-to-day basis get our news from the media. But aside from that, there is a political community, and the people who are representing us who have access to information that the average person doesn't have, and even access to information that they may not share with the media. And so my question becomes, what do our representatives do about these things? Because certain decisions are made on the political realm. The decision about the laws that govern police officers is basically a political, legal decision. What are they doing?
But Bill, go ahead.
No. Carol, that is just so wrong.
Okay.
Here's the strength of the black community that I grew up in. Who settled the disputes? Our deacons and our grandmothers and mothers who sat out on the porches, who settled our differences. The police were never called in. We have absolved ourselves of that responsibility. We don't do any of it. Our elected officials, and I love them all dearly, I do, truly do, and I don't want to start any controversy over that. But just recently, the federal government, Center for Disease, put out a study.
CDC.
And it was like $100 million, Will. And it's to find out what's going on wrong in the black community.
Okay.
What is going wrong with it? And they gave the money to USC, University of Southern California, Harvard.
Okay.
And you know what I'm talking about. Not one HBCU got anything. And this is but it's the policy. It's the institutionalized. I got to think of another word than racism. Well, but it's institutionalized something that keeps us in the hole because we don't get the resources. I know Will Brothers does a lot of this stuff, and a lot of other people are doing a lot of this stuff. And I'd rather see those folks directed to that and the HBCUs working together to try to fix. But we don't have the resources. Then our elected officials will go to Richmond, and they'll come back with nothing. Well,
That's what I'm talking about.
But listen, let me. Then I'll finish this. Because then it institutionalized failure. And then, Norfolk State doesn't get its fair share, and Virginia State doesn't get its fair share. Or what they're doing, institutionalized racism in North Carolina HBCUs by now lowering your tuition and then calling all the universities by the state university's name, which means they're just going to pull them all in anyhow. But in politics, it's been no representation. I know there's people out on the street. Will has convinced me that they are. But they're just not results driven. It's just not getting us the kind of results that we need. So it's very frustrating, and I'll let it go.
Comprehensive.
If you're just joining us, it's the Another View Roundtable. Roger Chesley with the Virginian Pilot, Carol Pretlow with NSU, community activist Bill Thomas, and journalist, author, and talk show host Wil LaVeist. Eddie Glaude Jr. is a professor of religion and African American studies at Princeton. And he said this, it isn't simply that young black men are evil. In so many ways, we have failed them. I am not absolving them of their responsibility for crime. I am simply holding us responsible for the world that produced them. Roger.
Yeah, one of the saddest things that, and Will has probably experienced this too, if you go into a jail or a prison in the U.S., you are stunned at the number of people who look like you when you go in. And I used the analogy once, was this the way it felt when we were brought over on the boats in the holds of the ships? And I went to a state prison in Chesapeake a couple of years ago. I was asked to do a speech and to talk a little bit about myself. And when the questions and answers came in, I had said a little bit about my background, growing up in a two-parent household, was able to go to college. And one of the gentlemen said, we didn't grow up like that. What can you tell us to help somebody like me?
Right.
And, I mean, we are so much a product of our upbringing and our parents and the schools we're able to go to. I didn't have a good answer. And that doesn't mean that, we shouldn't try to do the best, but let's face it, some of us get a little bit better opportunities on the front end. And so it was easier for somebody like me to end up where I was.
Right.
Exactly. And the hurdles that other people who look like us are faced with from the jump, maybe not growing up in a two-parent household, maybe not being in a good school system. You can overcome that. But boy, it makes it a lot easier if you don't have some of the negative
if you already
baggage.
have that advantage going in.
Exactly. My father was stationed at Fort Leavenworth. They had the federal prison there. They had the Army, Navy, military prison there, and they had the state prison there, all three. And this is 1960, so I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And they would take the prisoners out on open trucks, flatbed trucks, to go bust up rocks on the riverbed and stuff. They were all white. And what we would do was throw rocks at them. Losers, they're all white. 99% of the people on those duties were white. And we would throw rocks at them. Loser, killer, murderer, And now to see this is what, reflecting back on Roger saying, it breaks your heart.
Yeah, it did. I guess I'm trying to get to, though, and I think you bring up a very good point, Roger, how we need to look at poverty, racism, lack of jobs and education, all of those factors come into play in terms of why people feel like pulling out a gun is the solution as opposed to other ways that we might handle issues.
Barbara, I want to buttress the point that the researcher made, which is also showing that there are blacks at predominantly white
Yes.
institutions
Eddie
and
Glaude is black.
non-whites and non-blacks. There are white folks
Yeah.
at predominantly white institutes who get it and who care about these issues.
I understand
And I want to buttress that point. Just 2 sentences. I'm going to omit some things because if I don't, you'll know exactly what this is. But it says the 7 gang warriors were trapped in a blank rendezvous at 2122 North Clark Street. This is in Chicago. Lined up against the wall by 4 men, 2 of whom were police uniforms and executed to precision of a firing squad. The killing stunned the citizenry of Chicago as well as the police. And while tonight there was no solution, the one outstanding cause was illicit liquor traffic. Where do you think that's from?
That was from
Prohibition, I would imagine.
That's what I would think.
That's the St.
That's
Valentine's Day
interesting, too.
massacre.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's 1920s.
Right.
Gangsters.
Right.
They were white ethnics. Gangs. Same types of conditions, economic conditions existing. There's no black gene for this. This is not a black gene issue. This is a human issue. When you put human beings in certain conditions, you're going to have certain predictable outcomes. And that's about Al Capone. And Chicago is notorious in many ways because of this era. That is in the DNA of the city. It's in the DNA of my Brooklyn neighborhood. The East Coast version of it was Brownsville, Brooklyn. That's where you got Murder, Inc., the Brownsville boys. That's where these guys, this is how they ran their operations. And so my neighborhood, Brownsville, same types of issues. So if you have the same conditions, it doesn't matter what the race of the people are, you're going to have the same kinds of predictable outcomes. Now, how did they stop this? The people in the city say, this is bad for Chicago business. We're going to put an end to this. And they put together a strategy that put an end to his gang and all of that and moved that and quelled that problem. But they left the conditions the same. And then you had blacks coming up from where? From the South into the same conditions, locked out of the locked out of the broader economy. So what did they do? The logical thing that you would do. We got to go to the underground economy.
Do what you got to do.
And I mean,
you got to eat.
There is a socioeconomic underground community that is surviving the best way that they know how.
That's right.
That they know.
Just a couple of quick things, and one, I had a talk with Billy Cook, former school board member,
I'm glad you brought
yesterday,
that up because he's having his event.
And he suggested why not have sociology departments at NSU and ODU to facilitate some type of study that would perhaps develop courses of actions to deal with crime and violence. That seems like a reasonable the thing to look at. I mean, it could be another report, but I think it's something that's good. Media and all of us need to back those types of organizations that seem to be making a difference and giving them more play. I've said before about Teens with a Purpose. They're a good one. There are other groups out there we should back as well. And 60 Minutes recently did a piece about a high school in Newark, New Jersey, all male, mostly black and Latino students. And the school had closed at one point after the riots in Newark. But then, the Catholic institution that was behind it said, let's restart, let's try to do better. And they're having huge success in sending young men to college and not accepting failure. They have some things that look very similar to what Achievable Dream does locally. And I know that Algie Howell, the former delegate, now on the parole board, the state parole board, has expressed some interest in that. And I think it's incumbent upon us in the media to, highlight and advocate for such organizations and such funding also from public and private sectors to support these things.
To your point, Roger, Colonel McCormick, the owner of the Chicago Tribune, was a part of the big leaders that put an end to this. As a result, partly because a Tribune reporter was gunned down in gang violence, and then they learned later that Tribune reporter was on Capone's payroll.
Wow. Go ahead, Bill.
Roger, I hear you, a lot of wishful thinking. But nobody wants to really solve this problem. 15 years ago, Dr. Harvey raised tens of millions of dollars. We went down and got the Constitution of Virginia changed so we could start charter schools to do exactly what you're saying. And he even said he would guarantee success. He said if they couldn't pass the SOLs, or they didn't pass, or on tune, or couldn't get into any school in America, he would give them their money back. You know, I'm not going to yell at people at City of Hampton, and it was black folks. They told us to go to hell. They didn't want that. And it's just so there's a mentality. It's a mentality. It was the fact that we were going to build a brand new school. We were going to dedicate our educational piece to train teachers, be teachers, bring in the people that understood the problems, and it was turned down. Even after General Assembly and all those folks down there approved the law. Winston Sears brought it up.
You have that property, the old school of the deaf of the blind
which is
over
still
there,
sitting over
which
there.
is sitting over there.
Yeah.
Because Bill and I are 100% on this, that we need border schools. A lot of the children that are in families that are dysfunctional and having these challenges are going to school. That's where a lot of times they get a chance to eat. That's a lot of times where they get positive reinforcement from the teachers. Then they return to the communities where they're back in the same condition. A lot of times, for the same reason why the rich send their children to border schools, it's the same reason why these children
should do it.
Should go to a boarding school.
Quality boarding school.
That's interesting, Roger.
And I hear what you're saying, Bill, but I don't think that you should say because it didn't happen then, we can't try it again.
Exactly. We tried it again.
We
tried it again.
Wait a minute.
Let me finish. Hold on. Let me finish first.
And to not be afraid to try different strategies until things work. And yes, we've come to, I think, a realization in the state that charter schools are not, necessarily evil, and there's more of an acceptance of them, and it took some time to get to that point. And I know it's been slow, but I think we should continue to do some of these things, and quite frankly, we can't afford not to.
The issue that I'm saying, it wasn't about charter schools. It was about what Will was saying. Some of these kids got to get out of the environment. They have to be taken away. And so the deaf and blind school, which was for African Americans that were helping African Americans, they closed the doggone school down and put it someplace out in Southwest Virginia where we don't even have access to that anymore. So it has been tried.
They left the one in Stanton.
Yeah, Stanton going up.
But we can't. But I guess the point being,
you got to vote these Negro specialists out. We got to get these people who don't understand that we're only going to survive is like we used to survive. The strongest part of our community used to be the goodwill and the love in our community because we loved us and we fought against all of the issues and all the traps that we were segregated in Cleveland and Chicago and all these other places. Until we get these people out, especially the elected officials, black and white, who will not stand up for us, I'm telling you, and give us the money. You can talk about ODU and Norfolk State doing this report and all you can. Where are they going to get the money?
But hold on one second, though. Go ahead, Carol.
That's why I mentioned the political aspect of it, because if the federal government or the state government provides funding, and it's not the panacea for everything.
They're going to build a football stadium.
But listen, folks. Here's my question to you, because while yes, we can deal on the political level, I think that this is much more of an epidemic and we can't wait for the political process.
Okay.
What else are we going to do to make a change? That's my point. Let's talk to James in Newport News. Hi, James. You're on the air.
Yes. Thank you for taking my call, Barbara. I was just calling. I lost my nephew last month to gun violence, and then Friday I lost my niece. She was
so
shot
sorry.
and murdered too.
Condolences.
Our
and
condolences.
I thank y'all. And it's very difficult. Now we taking care of her 4 boys, but I don't understand what's going on in downtown Newport News for all this gun violence to keep happening. I have a daughter of my own, and I'm scared for her. I just wanted to call and let y'all know.
James, what, just from your perspective then, especially since this has hit you right where you live and in your family, what do you see as a solution? What do you think that all the other citizens and all of us need to be doing to try to make a change?
I just think it starts at home. We need to be here for these young men so they can have somebody to look up to, see how an adult man goes about his way as in taking care of responsibilities. going to work and being there for his family. That's what I feel like that needs to be done, and that's what these 4 young boys need to see, how a man's supposed to be and how he's supposed to take care of his family.
Got you. Okay. Thank you so much. And we, again, extend our condolences to you and to your family. So go ahead, Will.
Yeah, I mean, I support, as a father has raised 2 sons, raised a daughter, I support what he's saying 100%. But what has also happened is there are a lot of kids who are getting sucked in by the streets who have 2 parents at home.
Yes.
It is what he said, but also people who are trying to do the right thing need the support from the broader society. Just like I pointed out with when Capone and his boy, people got in an uproar, they said, no, we can't have that.
So we haven't gotten enough in an uproar yet.
Because you need, again, people talk about, for example, the no snitching thing. That's nothing new. Capone killed several people and no one talked. They got him on tax evasion because of no snitching. That's not a black thing. That is a thing that happens in the community when people are exposed. You're going to tell the police, and then the police are gone, then you're dealing with the gangsters.
Amen.
Because
What are you going to? They're the ones right there. They're the ones. So people need that type of dynamic needs to be disrupted, eliminated,
and
in order for you to have
hit it again right on the head. This virus has now spread from singles to it doesn't matter. It hurts me to see some of these things out in the community where kids with parents are good parents,
right.
Mom and dad at home, they're being snatched up. It's just like, it's sad. It really is. But, well, you hit it around the head.
Let's talk to Sheila in North Carolina. Hi, Sheila. You're on the air.
Hello. I may be naive, but I started a test about a couple of years ago in North Carolina. And I just started going around town saying, hello, my sister, hello, my brother. And I had so much resistance at first. But then I noticed a year later, other people were saying it. And I think if we start referring to each other as brother and sister and have a connection with one another, that we are all connected, and you feel that love and speak to each other and not turn our heads, we would start back being a family, being together like we were in the 60s, just from love itself. That would give us respect for each other.
Okay, thank you so much, Sheila, for your call. So she's saying take it all the way down to a very basic level in terms of the community. The City of Norfolk's Public Works Department is holding a safe summer rally for the students at Ruffner Academy. It is next Friday, the 17th, from noon until 2, and they have various speakers like Anita Blanton from Wavy 10. They have the mayor-elect, Kenneth Alexander. They have a guy named Gene No Malice Thornton from the rap group Clips. I'm sorry, I'm not a rapper. You know who he is? Good brother. Okay. So they're bringing in these folks, and they're also bringing in people from Norfolk State and Booker T and the Maury High School cheerleaders and so forth. But they're trying to wrap up a year-long effort between the Public Works Department and Ruffner to help the kids. Why are you shaking your head, Bill? There's got to be something.
Because my kids went to Ruffner. I made them go there. Took them out of Norfolk Academy. I want you to see real life. And that was maybe 15 years ago. And they had a very good principal there. Ruffner won the fluorescence. They won the debate championship. We started a Japanese culture club. We started everything. That school was right on top of everything. And all the city and the public schools and the housing authority was working with us, and it was just a perfect model. Couldn't have been better. They had the kids in uniform. We made deals with the cleaners to get the kids closed. We had corporations coming in.
So what's your point?
They let it go. They just let it drop till it was on probation so many years. I thought they had closed Ruffner. So my point is, you guys talk all of this stuff, and you do a good job of what you do, but at the end of the day, it's failure.
But
absolute failure. You let good things go away.
Carol, go ahead.
Even though something may have happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago and it didn't work.
It was working. The city and the school board stopped supporting it.
Okay, so Bill, why not try again?
Well, let me ask you a question then. So then are you saying that because things changed at Ruffner that perhaps these folks who are trying their best to do something shouldn't do it?
They're doing the wrong thing.
They're doing the wrong thing.
This model doesn't work. This model, going and showing somebody how you look, and they're all good, it doesn't work. That model doesn't work.
Okay,
you need to have, now, the gentleman, you said somebody wanted to get together and do some studies and stuff. I can't remember the guy's name.
Billy Cook.
Billy Cook. Now, I agree with him. I think you need to sit down and structure things that work. Field test it. Get people that are smart, like Will. Will is really good at this. Put him in charge. Let some other different people try different models. The models that we have now are not working. They're not working.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that those people should not do that. I think that they need the support. It needs to be comprehensive. Like I got a text from a friend that said
let me finish this one thing though. Just
Go
make
ahead,
sure.
go ahead.
No. Because I want to make sure I present this in the proper light. Because this event is the culmination of a year-long effort between the Public Works Department and Ruffner, where they provided mentoring, career counseling, student support services, etc. So this is just the culmination. So I don't want to represent what they're doing.
Go look at Ruffner's academic records. Let's see how they are performing. In fact, I'm going to do it. I want to go look at their results. Okay. How many kids are getting tossed out? How many kids are graduating? How many kids are really doing some things?
And I feel you, Bill, on that. But here's the only thing that I want to raise to you also, and that is the kids who live in poverty. They suffer with the school scores and all that, but they've also got all these other social issues that surround them,
and mental health
issues and hunger and all this other stuff that surrounds them. So I think from my perspective, the comprehensiveness of all of it has to come together. I don't think it's one thing that you can do, and we should study and we should figure out which things work. But I don't think you can just say that doesn't work. Don't do that anymore.
It hasn't worked, and it's not working. What does work is the fact that what is the housing project next to Ruffner?
That's Calvert Square. Top Border.
Yeah.
There's also Calvert Square.
My daughter's best friend.
Calvert Square.
They made a connection that hadn't broke in 15 years. That young lady is married, is a nurse, is one of the most proficient, decent people I've ever met. If you challenge these kids and give them the resources and show them some love like that young lady says, that and be consistent with it, don't bring the sugar and then take it away, but be consistent with things that work, it can work. Our people are great. Our people can learn. We're not stupid. We're not murderers. We're just in a bad establishment directed way that are keeping people out of the main loop. Let them in and let them succeed.
And Barbara, we got 45 seconds. And that's why I think your point about it being comprehensive is what needs to happen. Not these individual efforts shouldn't be, torn down. They need to be supported because so from when we talk about border schools, we're not saying just take them away from their families and that's it. I'm saying give their families the services so that the families can get whole and heal along with it.
All right, we're going to continue to talk about this as we go along. Thank you, Roundtable, so much for being with me today and for joining me. You guys are just awesome. Hey, and thanks to everyone for joining us today. Remember, you can always access the podcast of Another View. Simply download the WHRO Media app. You can listen to Another View or any of the programs you hear on our radio and TV stations. The app is free and for both Android and iPhones. Next week, meet Mayors-elect Donnie Tuck of Hampton and Kenny Alexander of Norfolk. What do they plan for their cities? We'll find out next Friday. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Lisa Godley is our show producer. Todd Washburn is our audio engineer, filling in for Victor Bowen. And Kamaria Mason answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham Lee. Make it a great weekend, everyone. Let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.